Welcome, BlackLine users. This is Sonia Luna, CEO and founder of Aviva Spectrum, the premier BlackLine implementation experts. We'll now cover in this ATV, I call it the advanced tip video, auto certifications and dealing with risks and those compensating controls you want to be aware of. We'll get into it. Who do we have here with us today? It's none other than Jeff Adler. He is a BlackLine expert here at Aviva Spectrum. He has over 40 years of professional experience and 13 of which with BlackLine software implementations, advanced tips and tricks, et cetera, et cetera. He is definitely one of the major gurus in the BlackLine user group and family. Now, what are we going to cover today? The goal of reconciliations is number one, meaning what is the true meaning of getting a reconciliation done and done correctly? Number two, let's talk about auto certification rules. What are they intended to do and the purpose, but also discover some risks. That's item three in terms of auto certifications and thinking through what could go wrong and is it a high level risk, moderate, low, etc. in your environment. Fourth, what are the best methods to leverage that manual, that human being intervention when you do turn on auto certifications? And then fifth, we are going to offer you a free BlackLine diagnostic. We'll cover exactly what's entailed, why it's complimentary, and more importantly, what's the outcome of that particular diagnostic. So let's get into it. What is really the goal of the reconciliation process? Now, when you do a Google search, you might come across Wikipedia, and in it, it'll talk about unqualified opinion, right? Those external auditors giving you that opinion that balances are fair based on certain principles, etc. It is not just checking the box that something was finished. And you can even see the opinion down below, which is an example opinion about financial statements and the numbers related to it. It says, look, it's to present fairly all the material aspects of the position of the company, meaning it's not just check the box, it's making sure that those numbers are accurate, complete, and there is some reason behind it. Now let's get into what I call the main purpose of what we hear our clients talk about auto certifications. What is it that they believe they're getting in the outcomes? One of which is they want to save time, right? If they know something should be done automatically, fast, efficiently, they're really leveraging auto certification to really save them a bunch of time and then also prioritize their workload. Jeff, do you want to add a little bit of comments about some of the clients that you've worked with and some of the ways auto certification has helped them?
Sure, Sonia. I want to clarify, though, the terminology of auto certification. It does not say auto reconciliation. It says auto certification. And the difference, while it may sound like a fine point, is certification, as you'll see as we go a little further, says that the account balance met certain rules. Auto reconciliation, if you look at the term reconciliation, to me, normally that means the balance is right. Now, sometimes the rules mean the balance is right, but sometimes it just means it met a rule. And we'll give you a couple of examples of those. But what auto certification can help you do is then prioritize your workload to spend efforts on the more complicated accounts, because the accounts that do auto certify generally will require maybe still a little bit of oversight, a little bit of checking, but not nearly the amount of effort that would be spent if you were just doing the reconciliation from scratch. All right, back to you, Sonia.
Excellent. And now we're going to cover the 10 different rules that you can consider when you are auto certifying. And Jeff's going to cover also the brackets and what they mean, just so for those of you who are writing notes or want to write stuff down.
Okay, Sonia, thanks a lot. You can see here, everybody, that there are 10 rules. There will be 5 on each page, of course. But you'll notice the name of the rule, I think, pretty clearly describes what the rule will entail. For example, rule number 2, the subledger reconciliation match. If the subledger balance is imported, it matches the general ledger balance, that account will auto-certify. Or the first rule, balances are 0, no activity in the current period. That account would auto-certify. Now, the numbers that are shown on the left is the number that is, or the order that these appear when you look at the auto certification page in BlackLine as an administrator. However, the rules do not run in that order. The order they run is in the order shown in the brackets. So for example, on this next page, you'll see there's the amortizable prepaid rule. It is number 8 when you look at the list of rules, but it is the first rule that's applied when the BlackLine process goes out and says, does this account meet certain criteria to auto certify? So just keep that in mind. I personally have not seen an instance where somebody has said, hey, we were misled because this account auto-certified. We thought it was going to be the amortizable prepaid rule, but instead it was a zero balance rule. Just keep in mind that the order is a little bit different. And if something does pop up that you say, this causes us a problem, by all means, contact BlackLine so they can do some things to help clarify how those rules are used. So here's a couple of examples here of how rules can work great. Remember, it's auto-certifying, not auto-reconciling. So one of the rules is the general ledger balance has not changed and no activity. That is a fabulous rule for the equity accounts because those will very seldom change, and for goodwill accounts. Again, those will very seldom change. In the subledger match rules, if you have a very tightly controlled process for accounts receivable, property, plant, and equipment, inventory, you want to make sure that the balance in the subledger agrees with the general ledger. That is another great example of how BlackLine can help you save time, saying, yes, the subledger agrees with the general ledger, let me move on to some other things. However, sometimes those rules may not lead to the right answer. For example, general ledger balance has not changed to no activity. Great for goodwill, great for the capital accounts, but the legal accrual account, if you should have accrued for the settlement of a lawsuit because the legal department said, hey, we lost the lawsuit, set up a $10 million liability, and you didn't make that journal entry, the account would auto-certify. Or you made a payment on a long-term debt that normally doesn't change from month to month. You make quarterly payments. You made the quarterly payment, but somebody recorded it in the wrong account. The wrong account will auto-certify. Or an example of subledger match, maybe the second example there, property, plant, and equipment. You sold a significant business unit. It was the end of the month. Nobody got around to making the journal entry to remove the property, plant, and equipment. So both the general ledger and the subledger are wrong, but they agree, so they would auto-certify. Now, I'm not saying don't use auto-certify. However, you do need to remind your staff and yourself that you still may need to at least glance at those accounts, at least look at the name on the list and say, is there anything unusual that might have happened that I might need to go account for? Now, BlackLine did make some improvements in the application. But Sonia, here we'll go back to you for a moment. You can talk about these issues about auto certification.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And what I wanted to hone in on is that if you do turn on auto certification rules for an extended period of time, just remember that you might lose some of that tribal knowledge of how that account balance is supposed to be reconciled. Think about the external auditors. These are your other stakeholders to that account rec, meaning they are looking to you, the management team, to get that rec done properly. And losing that knowledge actually could be detrimental to the company. So it is a best practice for you to review those balances, meaning validate those current account balances, and then also let's not lose that knowledge that the accounting staff has on how to properly reconcile that account. Jeff, we'll turn it over to you about the old auto certification process that used to be done.
All right, great. So what was happening, if you have used BlackLine for more than a year, implemented a couple years ago, you know that the auto certification process is there, and you probably have turned on some of those rules. I'll call it the old process, mainly because that's your knowledge level, but the rules are enabled one at a time by a business or system administrator. The threshold, and they are implemented globally. If you turn a rule on, it affects every account. The threshold, the certification threshold, is set globally as well. And there were some limited exceptions you could use. You could opt out a certain account to say, don't use auto certification at all, or you could change the certification threshold for an account that says, if it meets the rule, but instead of having a threshold of $1, it's okay for this account to have a threshold of $100. You could go ahead and set those thresholds separately by account. But still, there was a lot of global power that if you turned something on, there was risk that you could have unintended consequences. Now, BlackLine improved this process about a year ago, and now rules can be enabled specifically by account. So you could go in and say, yes, for my goodwill account, for my capital accounts, I want to use that if the balance doesn't change, auto certify. But I don't want to use that account for my legal accrual. And another thing that they did provide as a new feature is this second step here in green. Accounts can be configured to require manual certification after a set number of periods. Now, we had a number of clients that said, we still need to have an accountant occasionally look at these balances and see that they're correct and understand what's happening in the accounts. And the only way they could do that in the past was just turn off auto certification altogether. It obviously met the goal of we need to have somebody touch the accounts, but the problem was then everybody had to touch every account for that month. Tremendous peak and valley problem, right? That's one thing we hate. We want to have consistent workloads. Now, what BlackLine did add as a great feature was you can require manual certification after a set number of periods. And you'll see when we go into the application, if you have an account you want to look at every 3 months, you just tell BlackLine only auto certify it for no more than 2 months. In the third month, I need to have a real professional accountant look at the account and certify it. Same thing with longer periods of time. You could do something maybe every 6 months, every 9 months, maybe once a year if you had certain accounts like your some of the equity accounts that you could just say, only once a year do we need somebody to touch that. So we're going to go through an example of how this is all done in BlackLine. First, we're going to configure the prepaid property tax accounts to use the amortizable prepaid rule and only that rule. We will then require intervention by an accountant every 3 months. And then I will import balances for the month of January 2017. And you'll see that the account's auto-certified. So I'm going to go into my own instance here. I'm in the Aviva Spectrum sandbox where we've got some information we can use. I'm logged in as Chris Miller, or Casey Miller. You see there's a number of different roles that Casey has. And we're logged into the December 2012 accounting period. If I click here on products and go down to view reconciliations accounts, you'll see the reconciliations that are available for that period. And you'll notice, for example, the common stock account has been system certified. If I click on view, when the screen refreshes, you'll see the reconciliation and you'll see the reason that it's system certified. The general ledger balance has not changed since the last user certified period, and there has been no activity in the account. Now, a critical part of this rule is the no activity in account. You need to make sure that your import into BlackLine does flag appropriately the activity field. If you've not used the auto certification rules, maybe you haven't paid attention to that field. If you do want to use this rule, you need to make sure that your import identifies that field appropriately. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the page, click back to go back to my list of accounts, and we'll look at one more here, the accounts receivable account 1100. Notice that is also system certified. I'll click view, and we can see the rule that was used here to certify this was the subledger reconciliation match. So the balance per the subledger was imported in. You'll notice if I scroll over the box where the amount is, you get a little pop-up that tells you the balance was imported, and you'll also see the general ledger balance is there. There is no unidentified difference, so it's system certified. Now, off the top of your head, you might think, man, that's fantastic. Let's do that for all these subledger accounts. However, sometimes you might say, it's nice that it agrees, but I still need to put in a supporting document. I need a copy of the trial balance. So even though here we've met the requirement of the balance agrees, let's go ahead and auto-certify it. You might still want to say, but I need Kim Wilson, the preparer, to still go in and put in that trial balance. So let's not auto-certify that account. But again, up to you to decide how to do that. Now, how do we do all this? Again, I'm a system administrator. I'll click here on System. In the Settings section, we'll go down to Auto Certification Rules. And here are all the rules that I mentioned in the PowerPoint, in the order that they show up in this grid, which is not necessarily the order that they are used. You'll notice here is the amortizable prepaid less than threshold down here in the grid. Now, I'm going to go back here to Products. In the Accounts section, I'm going to go to Mass Update Account Settings. And I'm going to look in the Entities section for my entity here in the Aviva Spectrum training instance called my training entities. I will click the refresh button right here. I'll go to the bottom of the page and you'll see that here are all the accounts related to my training entities. You'll also see down at the bottom here, I'm going to go to this column where it says Subledger Match. That happens to be the template column. I'm going to type in amortization, or abbreviate it to just amort. And here are all the accounts that use the amortizable prepaid template. In this case, they're all the prepaid property tax accounts. So I'm going to select all of them by clicking the checkbox here. And then we're going to look here at the auto certification settings. First, exclude from auto certify. No, I want to allow auto certification for these accounts. So I'm going to select that. The auto certification threshold amount, I'm going to change that to $10. Basically, I'm going to say if I'm setting up amortization schedules, and if somehow I have a journal entry that differs by $1 or $2 or $3 in total, as long as my difference is less than $10, I really don't care. Go ahead and auto certify. Occasionally, I'll make a correcting entry for the catch up of that $6 or $7 difference. Recurring auto certification limit. This is how many times will the account certify before I need a person to look at it. I'm going to set it to 2. So if this account auto certifies for 2 months in a row, in the 3rd month, a person will actually have to look at it. And then overriding the global auto certification rules, I'm going to say override the global rules and let me specify which rule do I want to apply. So for these accounts, I don't care if the balance is 0 and there's no activity. I don't care if any of these other rules, again, we don't have a subledger or a bank balance, but I just want to make sure nothing by accident can accidentally certify this account. So I'm only going to use that one rule, amortizable prepaid less than threshold. I'll click Save, and that has now updated the account settings for all of those accounts. Now, I'm going to go in, still as a system administrator, I'm going to click on Import Data, and I'm going to import my account balances. I've set up a file that just includes the prepaid property tax accounts, but I'll select that, click Import, and then we'll quickly take a look at the import status, again, clicking System, and then down here in the Jobs column, Import Status, and you'll see that here's our accounts import. It is running. I'll click the refresh button up here, and we see that it has completed. It completed successfully, and you'll notice one of the processes is the auto reconciliation process. It automatically runs when you import your account balances. So now I'm going to change my role here to an approver. I'm going to change my accounting period to January of 2017. And on my home page, you'll see that there are 10 accounts that auto-certified. So let's go in and click on Products, View Reconciliations Accounts. And here is a system certified prepaid property tax. We'll click on View. And we'll see that the unidentified difference is 20 cents. Remember, I put in though a threshold of $10. So even though somehow we got out of sync with these amortization schedules, the general ledger balance does agree the total of all these, oops, not sure I got my internet connection unstable sign there, but does agree with the amount here And of course, up at the top of the screen, it tells us the system certified because the amortizable prepaid was less than the threshold. So that's basically how it works. And we'll go back to our PowerPoint here.